You ready, kids? I usually try to dress a little bit more on theme for these videos, but I got this sweater, and I'm not taking it off. There's that. Hello, hi, sup nerds, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maddie. If you're new here, I hope your day is going well, and we're gonna be talking about a book. This book. Oh wait, no, that's not the right one. Wrong book. This book, I actually don't have the copy anymore because 123 people still have this on hold, and it took me 10 weeks to get it from the library, so yeah. Let's talk about Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So I read this book over the course of a week-ish, and up to about the halfway part, I was on board. I was enjoying myself. Surprising, I know. Now, let me be very clear. I don't do rant reviews, typically speaking, going into them to dogpile on the book later. I too want to enjoy the things that I read. And with this particular book, I was very intrigued by the people that I saw liking it and the people that were like trashing or being very upset by the fact that this book was not what they were expecting. So I definitely went into it open mind as much as possible, but I did have a couple of misconceptions about this book before I ended up getting my hands on it. Fourth Wing gained traction on TikTok, and for the most part, I had the assumption that one, it was YA. This cover looks like YA to me, like screams YA. The synopsis sounds YA. And number two, that it was a romance fantasy. Not a fantasy with a romance. I was wrong on both accounts. I also want to say I did have another assumption. I thought it was called Darkwing for a really long time. I kept being confused by the Fourth Wing thing. I'm still actually a little confused on that. But I kept calling it Darkwing Duck in my head, so that was fun. Let me explain a little bit more about the other assumptions that I had. If you are living under a rock, let me tell you what this book is about. Violet is a scribe. It's the only thing she's ever wanted to do. Her dad was a scribe and he died, so now she's got dead daddy issues and she wants to sniff books for a living. But just as we meet Violet, our main character, we also meet her sister, a dragon rider, and her mother, the dragon rider. And her mother basically says, hey, sucks to suck, you can't be a scribe, you're going to dragon riding school. Which is a wee bit concerning for our main character because she has a chronic illness that would make that feat very impossible for her. But instead of like explaining why her mother wants her to do this, she immediately gets thrown in line to the school. Her sister tries to give her some like helpful hints like find Dane, here's some armor, also stay away from that one guy that wants to kill you, which already in like the first chapter of the book is like so much happening for a new adult novel. But additionally, it sets up no motivations for any of the characters other than Violet wants to be a scribe, but really that's only relying on her relation to her dead dad, and it's not exactly strong enough for me to realize why she wants that other than she just likes writing books or something. Because a scribe, at least to me, doesn't necessarily work in a library. A scribe is someone who chronicles history, but that doesn't seem to be the way that this book actually goes. But I'm getting off track. Let's go ahead and refocus here. To fix the fact that we are speedrunning the plot at this point, Violet decides in a very obnoxious way that she needs to world building dump. And she does it because it's an anxious tick of hers, which is interesting for like about 0.5 seconds and then becomes incredibly annoying. Because even though she's describing the world around her because she's got this thing where she likes to just speak facts out loud, none of the facts are relevant to the story or the plot at that point, and it just completely feels so wildly unnatural. No one would do this. Maybe they would list like facts about animals or something like that, but like the way that she describes like the continent and the world, it just doesn't make any sense. From what I know, Yarros is not a fantasy writer, and I can definitively say that if she would like to continue writing in this genre, I would highly recommend building more of your world pre-inciting incident, but that's just my recommendation. I'm just a connoisseur of fantasy recommendations that are set at military academies, happen to know quite a few. There are so many elements of the world in Fourth Wing that just need to be flushed out on a couple of different rewrites, and I would actually find this world relatively enjoyable if this book hadn't just been published without really a second thought to how the structure of the world works, which I know is probably what everyone has touched upon in their reviews on this book, but it really was very grating even at the jump, because we have no explanation of why Violet's been made to do this, no explanation of what is actually happening, and she's info dumping things that don't have relevance at all to explaining that, and it doesn't even really feel like one of those books where you're just kind of thrown in. It just feels like there wasn't world building, so we're gonna just list off a bunch of shit about the world that's supposed to help you understand the world, but it really just comes off as info dumpy and stupid. Now, as I said, I had a couple of misconceptions. I did find out that it was new adult while I waited 10 weeks for this book to come in at the library, so I was expecting some spice, some heat, so to speak. What I found while I was reading the book that was really interesting is that despite the author being a romance author, this to me didn't feel like romantasy. This felt like a very strange attempt at trying to combine a YA novel with a smutty romance novel, and it doesn't work. In general, I just feel like if this book was just YA, it would have been a lot more fun for me, but because Yaros didn't pick a lane, we've got this kind of amalgamation of strangeness that still reads, as I said, like a first draft. And if we had rewritten it a little bit better, it would have been good. And I'm sure there's a bunch of you in the comments going, write your own book, blah, blah, blah. I have, and I'm working on rewriting it because it helps if you rewrite it. It gets better with rewrites. Just saying. The closest I can compare this book is to like if the Hunger Games and ACOTAR went on a date but had no idea what to talk about with each other.
I can't stop thinking about you despite the fact that you killed my whole family.
My whole family died right before my very eyes, and then I was conscripted into being the government's plaything.
Like, tonally, these two things do not make sense. Romance is just forced, like, as all get out. So what Fourth Wing ends up becoming is this like lukewarm fantasy with an incredibly tepid romance. And then a shit ton of people liked it. But as I said, I did enjoy pretty much what I read about halfway through. It was gonna probably be like a 3-star. It wasn't blowing my mind, as I said. The world building was grating. It didn't seem like we had a lot of thought process going into it, but halfway, the book turned south for me. I, for the most part, enjoyed the Hunger Games-esque style of writing. It didn't really matter at the time that the world wasn't really making a lot of sense because we were in the military academy, and it's a fun little dragon story. I like fun little dragon stories. And then the book got lost in its own damn sauce. So let's backtrack a little bit here. The cadets have to clamber over this wall thing to get to the academy because, as many people have pointed out, it's very necessary to kill off as many of your military elite as possible before they can go fight the war that you're fighting. That makes complete sense. Miss Violet is hanging out with Rhiannon, her new BFF, and then she also hangs out with this guy named Dylan, which I thought was a very interesting name to have in a fantasy novel, but he dies like a page later, so bye-bye Dylan. Violet does end up getting attacked on this parapet walk thing by another guy named Jack. He's kind of a dickhead, that's his whole personality, but she manages to escape because she likes knives, where she reunites with her bestie Dane. Here's the thing, this book has been the one that's tested my reading comprehension skills in a while, because when I read the first chapter, I thought Dane was Mira's friend, Violet's older sister, and that they had just kind of known him, and Violet was like kind of aware of who he was, but she wasn't really close to him. But over the course of just like 3 chapters, I found out, oh no, Dane is supposed to be Violet's best friend, despite the fact that that doesn't feel like it was set up at all. Dane's whole personality is rules and regulations. You know, the thing that the captain of the Ocean Gate ignored when he took a bunch of people down in a submarine to view the Titanic? Dane rightly thinks that Violet should not be training to become a dragon rider, learning to become a dragon rider, schooling to be a dragon. The school doesn't make sense. Considering her illness, he thinks that she probably shouldn't attempt this, and he also knows that she wanted to be a scribe. And despite the fact that 10 seconds ago, Violet was also on board with her being a scribe and not a dragon rider, she now then gets angry at Dane for having all the audacity to tell her the thing that she wanted to do herself. Girlie, he's trying to help you? Violet's motivations make no fucking sense throughout the whole book. Despite that fact, she's called the smartest and most clever. when she is not shown to be either of those things. Violet is a cheater, and she's not even smart about how she cheats, which is a whole other subject. Let's go back to my main man, Dane here. Dane is comically annoying. He's judgy and weird and controlling. He's so hot that Violet just finds herself fascinated with him. Like, the allusions to Tamlin and Rhysand are very prevalent while reading this book. Those characters being from ACOTAR, if you haven't read those books. But here's the problem with that comparison. Dane is always right. He's right to want to get Violet out of the school. She's in danger. She could die. He was right that his assumption that she wanted to be a scribe was true, but she decided to change her mind without us actually seeing that. He was also right to think that Xaden was a little fishy. Let's talk about Xaden now, which, by the way, we've already met him at this point in the book. It was in the first chapter where Violet was just told, stay away from the guy that wants to kill you, because apparently that's just a normal thing in this world. People just want to fucking kill each other all the time. Their conversation, their initial conversation, the romance initial conversation, the meet cute or the meet stupid, so to speak, is as awkward as like watching 8th graders at a middle school dance. Hi. Don't kill me! Okay. Like, I know this book was written for one purpose and one purpose alone, and that was to fill the void that everyone is feeling while there isn't more ACOTAR books out here. But how did you guys get suckered into this? I don't understand. Regardless of the romance fantasy genre or the romance fantasy tropes, I do have one serious gripe with this genre on a whole, and it lies with the white women who write this genre. Stop writing love interests who are ethnically ambiguous. Calling his skin tawny does not get you out of being a weirdo. Now that that's been said, let's move on. So Xaden does not get any character development for like 80% of the book, which is pretty impressive considering the fact that he is the most enigmatic character throughout the whole storyline. But in my opinion, he's almost, if not more, annoying than Dane is. Xaden is just as controlling as Dane. Hot take. He doesn't believe that Violet can do things on her own, so he just does them for her. Off page. And then his backstory makes no sense. Everyone has kind of reiterated the fact that the children of the rebellion going to the elite military academy to be dragon riders doesn't make sense. So we're not gonna go in depth on it. I was told at one point that Yaros was coming under fire for being at one point a part of the Mormon church. And albeit I didn't find a much religious iconography in the book, it definitely felt like the religious notes were just dropped in randomly whenever she needed a new god of something, like the god of death shows up, the god of rage, I don't remember. They were not very relevant to the plotline, but there is a point at the end of the book where we find out that Xaden is a pseudo-messiah character for these rebellion kids, and that's pretty weird if you ask me, but it is not as weird as making yourself insert character Jesus, so there's that. Once again, back to the plotline. As many have pointed out, the politics of this world do not make any sense. And the way that Violet describes the conflict they're supposed to be in is pretty interesting, in lack of a better word. She says, these greedy assholes are never content with the resources they have. They always want us to give more until they've learned to be content with our trade agreements. We have no chance of ending conscription in Navarre. Which, like, the way that that's worded, it's really undynamic and almost propaganda-like, like war propaganda. Like, the people that they're fighting aren't satisfied with their trade agreement, so we're just gonna keep trying to kill them until they are gonna back down? And calling them greedy assholes is very generalistic, you know? This just, especially considering the fact that there are children of the rebellion against her own country. Like, it's interesting to me that she doesn't see any sort of gray between her team and the other team. I did spend half of the book a little bit confused about all of that, but I was able to just run with it because war school and dragons. Oh yeah, let's talk about the dragons. I was told that I would enjoy the dragons, and for the most part I did. About a third through the book, there's this thing called the threshing, where the new cadets walk by the dragons, and they get basically bonded with the dragons. And it goes as well as you could probably imagine, and most main character that's ever main character bonds with 2 dragons. This is where I started really understanding that this book has not gone through any rethought process, because the concept of having 2 dragons is completely foreign to everyone, including the dragons themselves, and it's established that the dragons that talk like telepathically to their riders have just given these people no information about how their culture works, and that just seems entirely lazy to me. And I feel like it's because the author didn't want to think about how or why this is culturally relevant to both dragons and their riders, and just decided to blow past it. But our main character is super special, so she gets 2 dragons. Tarn is the biggest, baddest dragon ever. Like, he's like 500 years old, and he's big and large. And Darna is a little baby dragon, and she can fucking stop time. Oh yeah, so the dragons can give their riders powers, and I think they show up as like tattoos. They're called relics. I was really having a hard time understanding what this was supposed to convey, but now she's got powers. Yay. Also, this is just a random fucking note that I put in the script. There's a point where Violet wakes up in the middle of the night and she's wearing a corset, and I don't know if that was established that she needs that to sleep, but it was very odd and strange that she would be wearing that to sleep, because nobody wears corsets to sleep unless there's like some kind of back issue. I think you would be wearing a brace, not a corset, because corsets do not help. Whatever, sidetracked, moving on. And so despite the unbelievability of this situation, Tarn and Violet are bonded now, and they are going to go flying. And Miss Violet cannot keep her seat. She falls off his back like a little fucking lemon off of a cliff. So this giant dragon has to catch her ass hundreds of times. Like, I could get on board with her falling off the seat maybe like once or twice, and him being really gentle when he had to catch her poor widow body in his giant fucking claws. But hundreds of times? I just can't see it, Your Honor. Like, you're trying to tell me that this person who has an illness that makes her bones incredibly brittle is being captured from a free fall in a giant dragon's claws that are bone material, from what I was thinking a dragon would be made out of, and being jolted out of the sky, and she doesn't come back with like a shit ton of broken bones every time? Bear in mind, I do not have much reference for this particular illness. I did have a comment on one of my shorts that I made about this book that the EDS rep was good, but I don't know if this is possible. If there are more people with information about this, please let me know. I am, as you can probably tell, a little bit uneducated on the concept, but it just felt strange to me that this was a plot point. She can't keep her seat, so he has to keep snatching her out of freefall. No. But on the subject of Violet's illness, she has to work around it, which I do find to be an interesting part of the book, but the fact of the matter is that she does it in ways that just don't work outside of a controlled training environment. Like when she has fighting class, she just poisons the kids she's gonna go up against, and she does it so brazenly that Xaden immediately picks up on what she's doing and then like lets her get away with it because pretty girl, I guess? I don't know. And then on top of that, like they have this like American Ninja Warrior track set up, and she can't reach, like she's too whittle, she's too short. I'm so sorry, I don't mean to be like so like down and like babying her, but like I really don't like this character. But she's too small, so she has to stab her way up the side with her daggers, because remember, she likes knives. And she cheats. She cheats, remember? And once again, she isn't a great dragon rider, so Xaden, off screen, makes her a saddle and then yells at her like she's a child to use it. Let's be very clear, if she wasn't in a training environment and she was going up against a trained warrior in hand-to-hand combat who wants to kill her, she would die because she wouldn't be able to poison them and she doesn't know what they're allergic to. I don't understand. Especially the subtle part is where I started getting really annoyed because like, we don't even know what it's constructed out of. It's just on this giant fucking dragon's body. And we don't know how he made it. It just, plot device, Xaden just fixed it. The Zaddy happens to be a fucking talented leathersmith. I don't know. Also, by the way, Tarn is this giant dragon and he knows how to take the saddle off on his own and put it on his own. I don't know if you've seen a dragon recently, but they don't seem to have thumbs or the ability to like put on outfits. Just saying. So here's the thing. Violet gets bonded with 2 dragons, and then after that she becomes insufferable. She is whiny as shit despite the fact that she has 2 fucking dragons and no one can tell her shit. I had to pause multiple times through the book because she's just genuinely so annoying to me. On top of that, her and Xaden, Zaddy and Violence, as the derivative nickname he gave her at the beginning of the book, are now in love, despite that never being established. They've had like 3 conversations, and most of the time she's just like, "Don't kill me, please." And he's like, "I wasn't planning on it. Could you calm down?" This is where the book just started questioning my judgment out of nowhere, because apparently they were supposed to like each other, but they hadn't had any situation where that actually happens. The only difference is now they're bonded and their dragons be fucking. That's it. That's the tweet. So Xaden's like, "I can't take advantage of you while you're dragon horny," which like, oh fucking okay, sure. Gold star, man. He teaches Violet how to meditate and she's super good at it. Like she's never been good at anything before in her life. And then there's this random part where they go on a field trip to the front lines and then they get attacked because it's the front fucking lines and they have to run away. Things just fucking happen in these books and I don't understand if there was any real thought process that went into them. Oh yeah, by the way, they're fighting a nation of griffins, which if you were unaware, a griffin is a lion-bird hybrid. And from what I know of dragons and griffins, a griffin looks like this and a dragon looks like this. So I'm a little confused why we're fighting them. Is the griffins, are there just like millions of griffins? Is that why we have to have as many dragon riders as possible? And if we have to have as many dragon riders as possible, why do you keep killing your cadets? Like Xaden straight up tells Violet with Tarn she could mow down units of griffins in moments. Like yes, she's got the biggest dragon, but aren't there dragons in the field already? Why are we at war? Like it seems like you guys have the odds stacked in your favor heavily. Like there shouldn't be a war going on if you're just going up against griffins with dragons. Like there isn't. There is no fucking way. So after they run away from the field trip and go back to the academy, there's this very weird scene, tonally speaking, where Violet is having just like a normal conversation with someone where there's these weird millennial innuendos, because this book has so many of those. And then she's told that her sister is not dead and she just breaks out into tears. Weird tonal shifts of the crass, tonally weird 13-year-old boy humor is very strangely juxtaposed upon very stressful emotional ties to a war that is going on. Just goes from being standard whatever to being a complete fucking nervous wreck, and it just makes me more worried about Violet's mental health than anything else. After that emotional moment, we have to have a dragon battle. Why? Because fuck you, that's why. And that's when Violet kills the dude. Which in a book where death is used as a punchline more often than not, she doesn't take this very well. I have been known to not fuck with an I don't kill people main character. I tend not to like them in books like these because I just feel like it's lazy writing and really strange. And like other characters in the book point out, like, girl, you're at a school where they train you to ride atomic bombs into battle. You didn't think you'd be killing people? So there's this like weird stretch in the book where she pretends to be this like humble person, but she's a bad person. Let me be very clear. She cheats. She decides when the rules get applied to her or not. She leads her best friend on for literally no reason, despite the fact that she knows she doesn't like him romantically. All of these things are bad traits, and you're trying to tell me that she's broken up for having killed someone when she's at a war academy for learning to ride a dragon? Huh? Just get so fucked right now. Her motivations make no fucking fucking sense. And we're not even done yet. Oh, by the way, she's also got lightning powers now, which also mirror perfectly with Zaddy's shadow powers. Yay. And then they bone. That's it. They get saucy. And people have said that the sex scene was really descriptive. Like, yeah, I guess so. It's new adult, and I think that if you didn't have this sex scene in, or the sex scenes that take place at the very end of the book that don't really make sense, this book would have no ability beating the "this is a YA book" allegations. So they're just included despite the fact that these characters should not have been already physical with each other. There should have been a slow burn with these characters, and I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. And I'm not really a slow burn type of person, but they have no reason to want to fuck each other yet, despite the dragon boning situation, roofie shit. Fucking hell. And then they immediately break up right afterwards. This is where the book made me irreversibly angry. I was still relatively on board. This is where I just couldn't handle it anymore. Zaddy says some fuckboy shit like, "Don't fall in love with me," and Violet gets all whiny and annoying and goes, "You're gonna be with me because I can't do casual sex." I don't know why she had that accent, but that is exactly what happened. So they break up and then they get back together 10 pages later because character development, am I right, guys? And then at the very end of the book, that is completely foreshadowed, Xaden is actually a bad guy, and on top of that, Violet's brother is alive. I haven't even mentioned her brother yet. Let's do a segment on my channel that I have never done before, so it's not really a segment. Let's fix Fourth Wing. So, Fourth Wing has issues, as I've already spent the past 40 minutes talking about. Let me tell you how I would fix Fourth Wing. Number one, make Violet's whole personality be about wanting to be a dragon rider from the jump. It establishes an actual motivation. Wild. Number two, remove Dane's character entirely. Remove him entirely. Put that emotional backstory into Xaden's backstory. Xaden could still be a child of the rebellion. His parents still could have done whatever, but they could have had emotional connection that went back to their childhood that would have established a backstory that could have been a little bit more, I don't know, fucking believable, and then Dane wouldn't be around to be annoying. So, number three, introduce the dragon bonds way earlier in the story. Even maybe saying that could have been the inciting incident. It would have been fascinating if Violet had like snuck into the threshing and then bonded with two dragons. Like, we could have just led with that and you would have had something very interesting right out the gate. Number four, have Brennan die in the story. If we're going to introduce your characters into war, have them have an emotional story that actually happens on page and not off of page. Because we don't use Brennan, oh, I'm sorry, Brennan is her fucking brother if you don't know. Her brother has been dead the whole book, and when he comes back, it is such a fucking, like, non-issue, like, I don't even care that he's back because he's been this weird mythical figure for her, giving her like advice through this journal that's called the Book of Brennan, which is a weird way to describe a journal. And his advice hasn't really been anything interesting. So he comes back, I have no emotional ties to him. If he was actually maybe this kind of older mentor figure at the school helping her, and then he gets called out and then fucking dies on the battlefield, that gives her an emotional reality that she wants to pursue. And then once again, having Xaden betray her would be so much more effective. And then the twist of Brennan being not dead would be interesting. Wow, crazy. Number five, tonal fucking dissonance. When someone dies, give it gravitas, or I will not give a shit if any of your characters die. Additionally, please stop using millennial jargon in any of your fantasy novels. If you can't do it well, don't do it at all. And that's gonna be it. I'm done talking about this. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Bye. Put a dragon emoji or something down below in the comments. I wanna go do anything other than this. Goodbye.